Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to take a look at this very cool little Boker. This is the Boker Lancer, and it is, of course, a Serge Panchenko design. You may be familiar with Panchenko's designs because of the Spyderco dog tag series of knives, and you can even see a little bit of that styling here in this knife. I've got to start out by saying this is a really, really cool looking knife. Okay, guys, like, you know, whatever else you think about it and whether you hate the design or love the design, I've got to say it's different, it's interesting, it's compelling. I find this knife pretty appealing just on the design alone. All right, the other thing I think is neat about it is that I think this is a knife that's extremely sheeple friendly and probably one that even your friends are going to want to kind of check out because it's really kind of neat and interesting. Let's go ahead and get into some of the specifics here, beginning with size and weight, which we always do. By the way, I should point out this knife is visiting for review. It's not my knife. And the other thing I should point out is it's got some weaknesses, but I totally get ignoring those weaknesses for purely the cool factor of this knife. Back to size and weight. This guy is 7 1/8 inches overall, 3 1/16 on the blade, 4 1/8 on the handle, 2.27 or 2.3 ounces, which is literally, you don't even know this is there. It's under 1/2 inch thick, so carries very, very easily. In terms of grip area, you've got about 3 3/4 inches, actually just a little bit more than 3 3/4 inches. So it's going to fit most people's hands just fine, although it is on the small side for sure. Let's talk about the blade here. This is the limited edition from Blade HQ. And so this is an S35 VN with a satin finish, spear point style blade here. You got a top swedge and a partial flat grind. On the standard version, you're going to get 440C with a stonewash finish, but otherwise it's going to be essentially the same. Now, I think that's a huge upgrade here for two reasons. One, I like satin finishes way more than I like stonewash. And number two, I like S35 VN way more than 440C, and I think everyone does. However, I need to point out that I don't see this knife as this heavy-duty, hard-use cutting tool, okay? So because of that, I don't feel a need for any kind of high-end steel on here, right? You know, 440C is more than adequate for the kind of use that I feel this knife is designed for. And so at 440C, I don't think is a problem at all. And actually 440C is a pretty decent steel, and I would take it over most of the budget steels that you're gonna get out there for similar price points. And I know this is a little higher on the price point than, say, I don't know, something from Real Steel or something like that, but certainly I think about 60 bucks is what these go for, and it's not all that bad. So 440C I think is fine. And again, I think that's something that most people who want this knife are going to overlook because they like the design. It's more the cool factor and the interest level that is going to draw you to this knife than pure functionality. Okay. Let's go ahead now that we've kind of covered the blade and you've had my little, you know, philosophy of use discussion there, and talk about lockup and deployment. This is a liner lock. You can see the liner right there. There's this huge cutout, which does make the liner very accessible. Okay, even with the thumb, this works really well one-handed. You can see though, the way that they've done this is it's not really a full liner, it's more just a lock bar insert almost into the carbon fiber. It's not quite like that. There's a bit of a cutout and some other stuff going on, but it's really just, in this case, carbon fiber, or in the other version, G10 scales with this lock bar inserted into it. The opening hole is very easy to access, very comfortable. This guy is very smooth. Now you're not really, I don't know, maybe somebody can, but I can only kind of flip this open. And the other thing I will say is I can use this as a front flipper. It's not perfect for it, but it would be with one minor change. And if this was my knife, I would be taking something and just putting the slightest bit of texture right here on the back spine. And if you did that, let's see, focus. If you'd put a little bit of texture here, this would come open as a front flipper. See, you can see how I don't get it every time. With a little bit of texturing there, it would work really, really well as a front flipper. So in terms of lockup and deployment, it's a little different. Okay, the lock bar is kind of cool. I like how they've done the cutout. I like the texturing there. But it's not sort of the same, let's say, as a lot of other things that are out there that you may be used to. Again, I think it's more, I'm more than willing to overlook that because of the design here and the coolness and ingenuity of this knife. But if you're just looking for sort of a utility folder, that may be something that, again, could put you off. All right. So keep that in mind. Now let's take a quick look at the handle construction. We've already kind of talked about this as we talked about deployment, but this is really nice carbon fiber in the Blade HQ exclusive version. You've got the pocket clip here, and it doesn't look to be reversible. So single position pocket clip, and that's going to be right side tip up carry, just like that. Nice open construction though, and I'm really big fan of that. You've got minimal standoffs here, blade stop. So very little in terms of components going on with this knife. And I really, really like that simplicity. The Blade HQ version does have really nice carbon fiber. Of course, the other option is going to be the green G10. And I wouldn't be surprised if this comes out in a couple of other versions as well. In terms of construction, I think it's fine. It's certainly sort of a lighter use type of knife. I guess I should have mentioned too, when we're talking about lockman deployment, Teflon washers in here. But this is not, to me, sort of a heavy duty, hard use type of knife. And it doesn't feel that way in hand. Number one, the ergonomics are not great here. Okay, both of my fingers, one lands on this corner, one lands on that corner. So it's extremely uncomfortable. If I try to sort of adjust, I can get kind of to a place where it feels a little better. It's still not ideal. But again, I think you're buying this knife more for the novelty of it, more because it's such a cool folder and it's very sheeple friendly and it's lightweight and it's an interesting design. I don't think a lot of people are buying this because of the pure utility of it. So I can, I think we've got to overlook that a little bit. Maybe you're not willing to, but I will say this, if you like the design, I think you'll get over the less than ideal ergonomics because it is a really, really interesting, really, really compelling, really interesting, compelling design. So in terms of construction, yeah, it's fine. It's not heavy duty, but otherwise I think it's okay. Ergonomics, again, are okay. Got a couple of issues, but nothing that's going to be like the end of the world. Let's go ahead and grab some comparisons. There's a few knives that I want to use here. First off, let's pull out the Para 2 so you get just a general idea of the size here. So this is a fairly small knife. All right. And I will try to bring in some smaller knives to compare to it. Here it is, along with a Kaiser Corto. I think the Kaiser Corto fills a similar role in terms of just being a great EDC knife. However, I think this is a much more useful knife. Better blade, better ergonomics, actually really nice ergonomics, longer cutting edge. So I think, when I say this knife has some limitations, it does. There are a lot of things that I would recommend over this. Even something like this Tangram, this is the Santa Fe, but yeah, it's much more comfortable in hand, probably a slightly more useful blade. That's, I guess, a little bit debatable, but that high flat grind is going to be quite nice. And, you're going to get similar performance out of this steel that you will to 440C. What else have we got? Here is a mini Griptilian. All right, there's, that's a little smaller. Between the two of these, I prefer this knife only because I like the design much better. The mini grip just doesn't do much for me in terms of being compelling. Here, again, here's a small knife, but high utility. Out of all the knives I've shown you, this knife is going to be my favorite, just workhorse of a knife. And so if you want something a little smaller that can still get a lot done, I would definitely recommend the American Lawman. And finally, just to give one last size comparison, here is the Cold Steel 4MAX. Always good to compare everything to the 4MAX so that you realize that it's not all that big after all. So a few comparisons there. I will say a lot of those comparisons are going to be more utilitarian. Okay, they're going to get more work done for you than this knife. That doesn't mean they're necessarily better because the styling and the design on this are so cool. Overall, I think this is a capable cutting tool, but it's not the best one out there. If you love the design, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.